What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is a visionary leader of extraordinary people and projects. He's insanely ambitious. 4 years after graduating from college with his architecture degree, he founded his own company that he's been running for almost 22 years now. He's a global industry group champion in the Entrepreneurs Organization, which we'll talk about in a bit, and an advisory board member for the College of Architecture and Environmental Design at Kent State University. He's the founding visionary of K2M Design Incorporated, a full-service design firm from architecture to interiors to engineering and all things in between, specializing predominantly in hospitality projects. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Maloney. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks very much for having me here, Dan.
Well, aside from all the other stuff that I just said in your intro, I also would like to say that you've really become a friend of mine a good friend of mine over the past couple of years through this organization called the Entrepreneurs Organization. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but not just a friend, but also I would say like a mentor and a leader, because I am, for those of you who don't know, the global champion for travel and hospitality within the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a 15,000 member strong global community for entrepreneurs. And it's a freaking amazing organization, and it's helped me grow so much over the past 10 years that I've been in it. But I want to dive into that stuff also, but like what you've built and as far as the community you've built within these industry groups has been really nothing short of transformational, I think, for myself, but also like the organization and so many people at large. So I want to say thank you. Thanks for being my friend, Scott.
Hey, man, it is an absolute pleasure, and vice versa, for all of your energy and friendship over the last several years here as well. So truly, I've talked about you often and fondly as one of the most connected people that I've ever met in my life. And I think it's absolutely amazing that our paths cross the ways that it does.
Yeah, well, now you're making me blush. But a thing that I've learned from you, and maybe I did it organically, and I learned it from, I would say I learned a lot of this from you, but it's like we're all connected in our own way. We all have access to the universe through our own perspectives, right? And our own connections, kind of like a fractally designed org chart that connects the world, right? But what I've learned from you is, whatever our connections may be, how hard is it to share that with someone else? Like, it's such a low barrier to really impact someone and shorten someone else's journey, if you will. So thank you. And again, EO really taught me about that too, because it's all about leaving impact. So before we get into all that stuff, we'll start off with like the big question. What does hospitality mean to you?
It's truly about people and place coming together to create this just an amazing or an epic experience. I have the opportunity to travel all around the world, and when those two things are together, that I feel in my bones just the passion around hospitality more and more every day.
And then I love how you shared the word epic. So dive into what epic means to you, and let's use that as our springboard into the conversation.
To me, epic it's the opportunity for those two things, for people in place, really to as I say, come together and create, just enable me to have this amazing experience, to cater to whatever needs that I may be having, to be able to support whatever dreams and desires I have, for the place to be able to unveil itself. Now, as an architect, I photograph everything that I see. And so all of these places that I've been to over the years, I love being able to photograph it. I love being able to see that, how it changes over the course of an entire day, because the quality of light and the character of the space changes, from daytime to nighttime. And really, when you bring people, being able to provide that level of service and that place, being able to provide that sense, really engage your senses, I think that's, to me, that's the cat's meow.
And I love how also you put people first in that people in place, because to me, it's all about the people and that energy and connection between them all. And place is really, it's like, that's the setting, right? And it can really turn up the volume, pour gasoline, make things more memorable. It's like a carburetor for experience, if you will. But one of the things that strikes me about you, and I have envy of you, Scott, is like as an architect and working on God knows how many projects in the hospitality world, and not just architect, but design, engineering, everything. You've really built an amazing organization for your company. And so much of that is the people, because I very rarely, if ever, hear you say the word I. It's really all about your team and integration and how much you've invested in that over the past 22 years. So this could be a really great transition into entrepreneurs organization. But being an entrepreneur, like we don't have a rule book. Mm-mm. So what did EO, like how would you describe EO to people who don't know about it? And how did it help you? Because it's helped me tremendously on my own journey, but how did it help you build this organization that you've built and really attract all those people?
Certainly. So how do I define entrepreneurs organization? I think it is an amazing community of founding business owners. So people that have that entrepreneurial spirit, that are willing to take risks, and they come together in one global place so that you don't feel like you're on an island trying to figure it all out by yourself. But then you come together in this global place and you share your experiences. You don't tell people what to do, but you say, here's what's happened to me in that situation, if you have an experience share. And you get to learn from each other. You get to give each other needs, and you give each other leads. And you have a place that's extremely safe to be able to talk about, we call that the 5%, right? Things that are very personal to you, things that are involved in your professional life, and really kind of captures your full 360 degrees. So community, family, personal, and then of course professional. And so I think the second half of your question is, what did it do for me? And I will tell you this, I had two business mentors of mine that says the day you meet that $1 million requirement in terms of the size of the business that you have to join EO, and it's going to change your life. And I remember the conversation that I had one night after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame benefit, and Bob Boykin, who at that time was a YPOer, sits me down and says, you're going to get a call at 8 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow morning, and this guy Mike is going to call you, and the only thing you're going to say is, where do I send the check? And I'm going to change your life for you. And I think that is a 100% true statement, that absolutely has substantially impacted me in my life. And I think what it has brought to me is the ability of my eyes to be open, especially when you talk about people, and from a cultural perspective and that business culture. And how just to be able to learn about that across the organization and always be a student of it. EO that's one of the greatest gifts that it's given me, is the ability to be that student and learn culturally and be able to make those types of impacts with my team. Because as you said, K2M is not Scott Maloney. And it's far greater than that. And there's another 100 K2Mers that are out there that really are the ones that are make this place as special as it really is.
Well, as you were talking, I feel like what really resonated with me is this idea of people, and I think we become better with our interpersonal skills. I think as we're able to look inward and reduce our blind spots, and we all have blind spots. And for me, my experience is EO has helped me really reduce a lot of blind spots. I still have them. But I learned that through other people's experiences, and the people who are willing to be in this global community and to be vulnerable in a safe, confidential space. It only helped me uncover more about myself. And I feel like, they said that greatest journey that anyone can go on is the 6 inches between your ears, right? And it really just opened a path for me in there that's been a journey. And I am 48 years old. I still feel like I'm learning things. as a global place and a global community, when I was moving out to Asia with my family for a few months to open up some supply chain opportunities, I joined an Asia Bridge Forum, which is just a group of other people within Asia. And it was amazing because Asia is vast. There are so many freaking people, but it became so much smaller because I got to meet these people and everyone just wants to fall all over themselves to shorten my journey or your journey or anyone. It's really like, oh, you're looking for this. What is your need? Let me connect you there. So for me, it just made the world a much smaller place. And just really like as a lifelong student and always someone who's really curious, it helped me learn to shut my mouth and listen to others. I know I'm talking a lot now, which is the irony, but I get very excited when I talk about it because in many ways, the way that we're speaking right here and the communities that we've built within our industry groups, it's all about listening and giving a forum for others, which really helped me launch this podcast. It's like gotten legs because people are really interested because I'm sharing my curiosity with anyone who'll listen.
It couldn't have said it better. You know, it really does. The Entrepreneurs Organization really does make the world smaller. You know, they talk about 6 degrees of separation. You know, the old Kevin Bacon analogies. But man, when you are connected on a global basis across a very dynamic organization, it's tiny, and the people that you cross paths with and the folks you engage with because of trust and respect and our core values are just phenomenal, even if you've never met them before. Just that instant connection.
I also say, like, when you start your entrepreneurial journey within EO, especially, there's all this like business porn you got to read, right? From the E-Myth to Scaling Up to Traction to Map to like you name it. There's like an alphabet soup of books. But I think the other thing is what it helped me do is focus not so much on what I was doing, but the why. And the why is so values driven. And to go through an exercise with other entrepreneurs to really explore what your values are and company values are, it's a lot. Most people don't ever go through that work, and it's amazing. So turning the camera back on you, from when you started your company 22, 23 years ago, how long after you started your company did you join EO?
So it would have been almost 5 years, 4 years, 11 months. Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to like when you first hung the shingle out, to like all the struggles that you were having, or maybe you weren't, you were just perfect right out the gate. But you joined EO, and then like what were some of the biggest breakthroughs that you had as an entrepreneur and leader?
Wow. So if you think about it this way, I started 9/1/01. So on 9/12, I was calling from my cell phone to my desk phone to make sure we still had, like they still worked, because everything was dead silent right after 9/11, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for us, we had the opportunity to be able to grow over those next few years. But the first things right out of the gate, I had just bought a company in July of 2006. It was my first true acquisition, and it was the same month that I joined EO. And I had one person in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm like, I'm going to go visit Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to see what it's going to be like doing business there. And I met 10 EO members in Charlotte, 3 of which are still very close friends of mine. And could stay at their house. They would be able to do exactly the same thing with me. Just very, very strong connections. And they really helped me understand how to do business in Charlotte, North Carolina, and to be able to grow a nice book there. And the other was, at that same time, they're like, hey, come over to the Duke Mansion. There's this guy. His name is Jack Daly. And it was like, whoa. I mean, this is, now for those who have seen Jack Daly and heard him speak over the last, 15, 20 years, you'll get what I mean. But the first time, now this is like, I am brand new. Like, I am baby bathwater. Welcome to EO. I'm already outside of the chapter, and bam, Jack Daly is there. I don't think I slept for 3 days. I mean, I was like jacked up. I bought the CDs. I mean, I was listening, just absorbing like a giant sponge, everything I possibly could. And I think about 3 weeks later, after that session, Simon Sinek, before Simon was, this global phenomenon, came to Cleveland and talked about why, and talked about his triangle and all of his very early work. And I was hooked. I mean, I loved culture and I loved the aspect around people, but those two just took me on a space coaster ride and showed me how narrow my view was, and then just opened it up, and it became a lifelong journey that I'm on still to this day.
It's interesting. Like Jack, for those of you who don't know, Jack Daly is like a sales management coach, guru, whatever. But it's about, he starts with this story about how he got success running a paper route as a kid, and then how he figured out how to grow his paper routing friends and really bring the best out of others and show them that they had all these gifts that they may not have known that they had, and tapping into that and coming up with the idea that activity yields results. So how do we do that? How do we, but one of the things that really strikes me about Jack, I'd love to have him on here. There's so many things, but I love the simplicity of his roles and responsibilities. Yep. He's like, I forget exactly what they were, but he's like, I do 3 things. Maybe it's 4. I speak, I do something, and I do something. I don't remember what they were. We'll have him on to clarify. Do you remember?
I don't. This is interesting.
Okay. But I loved it. He's like, anything outside of that, his like zone of genius or whatever you would call, like he had a team that would help do that. This is like, so he's in his highest and best use. So I love that. I actually saw him speak at some EO things, but I went to that MIT Entrepreneurial Masters program, and he like lit up my brain. And I actually just got back. I went to a reunion last week out in Boston. So again, I'm kind of floating on, I don't know, just experience and knowledge that I gained from that, being in a room with 100 other entrepreneurs. But it's really amazing, this gift that they've given us. And then I also feel like I get to share a lot of that through the podcast and through talking to other people to kind of help plant a seed for others. I want to go back to your start so as you were saying that, it really resonates with me, because I started my first company as an adult on August 26th, 2001, selling furniture to hotels. You did September 1st. So like really for me, 2 or 3 weeks later, September 11th happened. I didn't have kids. It was just me. I think my wife was my fiance at the time. But it was also, as terrible as it was for our industry, it was really a great time to start, because everyone kind of had time. Everything just stopped as we tried to figure it out. And then we could fly around on all these jets, like jumbo jets that were basically private jets because no one was flying, and really build great relationships. How was your experience? Fear at first, and then turning that into a positive starting on September 1st, 2001.
Well, I think one of the greatest things that we had at the time was, it was 100% risk, right? And, I was able to rely upon myself to make sure that I took the steps that were necessary in order to be able to build the business. And I didn't know anything, nothing about business, right? But very quickly I learned accounting, finance, QuickBooks. I was the best janitor at a whopping age of 27. I could clean, I could paint, replace ceiling tiles as we hired people and grew out office spaces. It was fantastic. The jack of all trades, draft by night, sell by day. And really what it was is because things were as slow as they were, right? And I had the opportunity to get connected to people that could say yes to me. Right at that time. And my business partner, gentleman, his name was Harry Kegler. So Harry was the gray hair. So it's just like me today, right? As we were joking about earlier. And this very, very young man of 27 years old. But it was this, this energy with experience was our selling point, right? And every day we would have a different way of being able to pitch somebody based upon what we learned the day before. And so we were always constantly improving and constantly sort of pivoting. That beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and being able to move really swiftly, right? Especially as a small, lean business that we were, and be able to pivot and move to the way where there was an opportunity. And we did that super effectively.
Wow. As you were talking about that, I had the image of like this young energy and then older experience with your partner, of like a resistor. Remember that? You studied those in physics class? Like you have input, but then the resistor would tamp it down. So like, I feel like that's what the experience gives us. And again, EO for me, and just dealing with all these entrepreneurs, I think one of the first times in a public setting, it showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable on certain things, because we're not going to learn if we don't share what are those 5% highs, but also like the 5% lows. And I've been through many highs and some really bad lows, but I just feel like this community was always there to support me. Not so much, not financially at all, but just like from experience. And, you know, it's like when I'm in the darkest of dark places, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. I would hear these things and it didn't make sense when it was happening. It's like, Dan, what are you worried about? You got this taken care of. Like, you're going to figure this out. And I'm like, that does not make sense to me now. But it's a seed that plants. And then, you know, you get a couple months beyond, you're like, oh, really? Any idea that we can take, if we can marshal our focus on it, we can turn into something. And I think that's really what this has shown me, and being surrounded by so many incredible entrepreneurs. But, you know, you can't do it without people.
Without a doubt.
So on your journey, so you hung up the shingle on the 1st of September, 2001. What were your first projects that you worked on and types of clients? And then like, how has it grown over the past 22 years? And kind of where do you see yourself now in the world of hospitality?
For us, coming out of the gate, we were architects that had public project experience. And so, I mean, it was all government work. And being able to move from the government side into the private side of the world, you know, we started out with multifamily housing, and we were converting. At that time, it was very, it was cool because you were converting historic buildings that tax credits or the easements had worn off, and you were transitioning them to condominiums, you know, as a way for people to be able to exit out of those buildings and, you know, get their second bite at the apple, so to speak. And so we helped convert these apartments to condos. And every time we touched a condo, whether that was, here's the paint you should use to replace these kitchen cabinets, they sold. And every time they sold, we got another condo that we ended up doing. And it became dozens of them. And our client, which was our first client, Landmark Management, brought us over to one of their commercial properties and said, hey, can you help us here? And an investor in that commercial business then gave us an opportunity to do fitness centers. And just one thing after the other, it was do good work, got additional work, and then somebody heard about us, and it was just a reputation building, you know. And it was, you know, at that time, I mean, virtually 100% repeat business and referral rate. And, you know, we were really heavily sort of on that commercial side. And what brought us into the hospitality front was we were working, I had expanded into Florida, particularly into the Florida Keys. And I had learned of a property owner that was going to convert their property from this hotel into 56 housing units. And they happened to be here in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I did a cold call on them. Had a friend of mine through ULI and one of my teammates who were in ULI get together. And they introduced me. And this was right after a series of hurricanes in the 2005 timeframe that hit the East Coast. I think Francis, Charlie, one of those two names around that timeframe. And this company, Boykin Lodging REIT, so Bob Boykin, the gentleman I mentioned in the very beginning, and Rich Conti. And Rich was actually from my hometown, a little bit of generation apart, but a great mentor to me. And we're sitting there having a conversation, and he asked me a question. He's like, so my architect tells me that I can only do concrete block on the outside of this 15-story tall building. We don't believe that's true, you know, in this wind area. And I said, oh, it's not true whatsoever. You could do, you know, metal studs. You just got to be able to design the building in order to be able to resist the wind. And all of a sudden, you just hear this bop. You know, Rich pops up, and it was like a game-changing thing. Like, I just made them $1 million by saying that one thing. And then the following week, they made me that $1 million back because they hired us to do 2 hotels and then that one property that we originally went in, Marathon, the following year. Relationship went so well. That's how I got my start in hospitality. and I met Paula Boykin, and we got to learn about hotel interiors and a little bit about the management side of things, and then acquired their interior design company as my first acquisition that I talked about for the person in Charlotte and everybody else in Cleveland. And it really, that everything just continued to grow from there. And, you know, we were doing a lot of resort work down in the Florida Keys. We were then doing a lot of larger full-service properties in Florida. But, you know, the natural disaster of the 2005-2006 timeframe was the catalyst for our hospitality growth. And it's been on a nice upward trajectory ever since.
It's amazing when you think about, you know, there's September 11th, natural disasters, like as terrible as many of these crises are, you know, with the right outlook, they can always turn into opportunities, and opportunities to not just improve kind of what we may have going on in life, but also to impact others who are impacted by those experiences. And that's actually, as an entrepreneur, like I get so much feedback, whether it's the podcast or, you know, reinventing myself after like some business nosedive. Right. It's people are always like, wow, I didn't like, Dan, that's so cool. Like you bounce back, you're there. And I guess in a way I take it for granted, but again, it's like, you can look at something as a glass half full or a glass half empty. And again, it's how do you get those ideas and strategically lay them out so that you can plot a course. So after that cold call to the person you met or were introduced to it or recommended to at ULI, it resonated with me because, again, going back to where I just was at EMP reunion, there was a guy, a mentalist. You know those magicians and mentalists? His name's Wayne Hoffman. I think he's on TV or whatever. But he had this really cool thing. He's like, you know what? Put a thing in your calendar a week, 2 weeks out. And I want you to make it your mission that day to collect 5 no's. And, you know, you think about getting a no from someone. There's like a little bit of a fear and like, a bruised ego. And it probably goes back, as he was saying, to when you were an infant and your parents would say, no, don't do that. No. So it's like a bad. But really what he did, and it helped me change my thinking a bit, was no is really just a piece of information that helps you adjust and figure out your path. Right. So he did this exercise where he's like, who lives around here? Okay, where's this? What's a restaurant you like going to? So he called the restaurant and he's like, hey, I'm in a room with 100 people right now. So-and-so is recommending that you're great. And we're just talking about it right now. Do you think that he and one other person could come in for a free meal for marketing? And they're like, we'll talk to the manager about that, but that sounds like a reasonable idea. And it wasn't a no. But even if it was a no, it's like, okay, it's not bad, but like go out there and put yourself out there. Exactly. How did EO and your business experience teach you to collect no's?
Wow. It brings me back to thinking about some of those very, very early days, right? And, you know, within business life, as entrepreneurs, but more just as the business grows, you know, there are plateaus that we hit, you know, as your business develops. And so you might be used to doing projects that are $10,000 and under, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I have a lot of these. Let's try and do a $50,000 project, right? Well, in order to get that first $50,000 project, you're probably going to have people tell you no 10 to 15 times because you don't understand what it takes to do a $50,000 project, and you have to get smarter about it. And this is something that I learned through Entrepreneurs Organization as we continue to evolve our business from that 10 to the 50 to the 100 to the 500 to being able to do our, you know, 7-figure based projects. It takes you have to continue to climb that ladder, and what you did at 10 won't work at 50, won't work at 100, you know, from 50. It's you're constantly evolving, and Entrepreneurs Organization puts you around people that understand what that evolution is, because we're all kind of growing in our business, and you're able to help each other out. Kind of talk through what it takes in order to be able to get to that next level.
It's interesting because I spend the majority of my time doing custom case goods and seating for rooms, right? And you figure there's only so many different ways to design a guest room, and so many different materials, and so many different factories, and just ways to execute it. But what I've learned throughout my career, and now with Berman Falk as we do this, is whatever's gotten us to however successful we are right now, it's not going to get us to where we're going, because everything is always evolving. Even in a 400 square foot space, you're still learning new things and still surprised by so many things, and always developing processes around those surprises so that you reduce the possibility of those surprises happening again. They still happen, but it's always a constant evolution. And I feel like, in a way, it's almost like having a startup mentality. What do you think about that?
It's if you keep your mind open to the possibilities, that is just like having a startup mentality. Because when you're a startup, I mean, your world is open. Like you said, I mean, you're reading all of these amazing business books, right? And you're just trying to take everything in, and you're willing to do almost anything. Right? Like, I mean, we designed a person's outdoor barbecue deck, so that's where his daughter was going to get married. I never designed a deck in my life. I didn't even own a house. I didn't even know what a deck was, but we're, you do it, but you're open to, any possibility you can get your hand on. And the same thing happened to us when we were in the hotel business, right? As we were trying to get those first jobs. So not the, start out like, hi, I'm Scott Maloney. I'd love to do your $70 million hotel renovation project. They're like, what's your experience? Well, I don't have any. So you listen and you find out when those opportunities are. It's like, well, I'll let you replace the doorknobs in my $70 million project. You're like, I'll take it. Because you're open to the opportunity, you're going to learn about the doorknobs, and you're going to figure out what the peepholes are like, and so you can be able to do the two of those things next time. And then you're going to figure out the door locks, and as you go, you're just going to grow these opportunities. And like you said, you're always going to be evolving, right? And totally. That's really what I think. It's a great thing about the entrepreneurial mindset is you maintain a little bit of that flexibility, and you're able to make those adaptations where folks that may not be willing to take a risk, that may not have that entrepreneurial mindset, it's like, well, why do we need to change? Right? And the answer is because if we don't, it's going to go the opposite direction.
100%. And also just people's sensibilities, all the inputs, all the peoples, all the players, everything is always changing generationally, from outlook, current events, everything is always changing. I'm curious though, when you started back in 2001 doing multifamily and government and multifamily, and then also the fitness centers, and then you got your big break after that cold call into hospitality, what's keeping you there and what do you love about it? And that might be the same answer.
What I love about it is, and this is particularly focused around existing properties. And really understanding what that existing property is, and working with the customer, and discussing how a reposition is going to happen. What could happen in order to elevate that property to the next category, right? To be competitive within a marketplace, to be the better product that people select because of the things that we do. And those very initial conversations, being able to sit there, say if you're the hotel owner and I'm just, being Scott Maloney at the time, and walking around and having that discussions of what this could be, right? And going through that visioning process to the day the building is finished, the design is, or the day that the design is implemented, and going, wow. I remember, I have goosebumps every time that happens to me, that I walk into a property that our team has done, and we've been through that experience together, and to see how it comes to fruition and how it's realized, to me is that's why I do what I do, and why I travel as much as I do, to see other places, and really be able to bring that collective experience back of people and place, and what it can mean, for whatever we're working on at the time.
Yeah, and I think it's also a testament where we spoke earlier about looking inward and finding values and creating a culture around values. But then it's also, aside from looking inward at where we are and how we got to where we are and like what those common threads are, it's also going through the visioning exercise, I love how you put that, because, it's really like, how do you get so specific to what things look like in 1 year, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years? And then once you have like a target, and that's what EO also taught me, it's like you have a vision of where you want to go, then you can make the course to get there.
True.
So as you look at your projects now, like what's something that what's a project now that you're learning something new on, and that's satisfying that need, where you've gone through the vision and like maybe there was something you hadn't experienced and now you're pushing forward with it?
So one of the things that we are exploring right now is I'll call it a true greenfield development. That there's no infrastructure that exists around this marina project. And it's a very large project, many hundreds of acres, has 3 different hotel complexes on it. So really catered towards, very high net worth people, yacht club, casinos, the whole entertainment, retail. So it has, you're building a basic city here. And I think one of the things that's extraordinarily interesting about that is, and this is where my business brain goes, is like logistically, how are we going to do this? Because there's nothing there other than, trees, dirt, rocks, grass, and so it's you really get the opportunity to think through, okay, once I dig that hole, where does it go? Because you can't just put it on a truck and take it away with you, right? And so it really makes you think every step of what you're going through and what's the impact on the next step. And that's quite curious. We don't have that always as architects, engineers, and designers. You can't literally take one step without having an impact on the next one. And I think that's fantastic, and the sustainability aspect of it, because again, there's nothing there. So there's not like a gas pipeline, electric, utility center, fresh water. You're creating everything that's there, and so it makes you think entirely different about sustainability. Not just sort of, let's make something simple. Low VOCs are made within 500 miles of a project site or something along those lines. You have to take it all the way from the start to the finish line on this, because every single thing has to be sustainably thought through.
Yeah, and it's interesting how constraints, whether by sustainability or location or people or brand, it's these constraints that really make the magic come to life.
Without a doubt. And I think it's going to make this, it's a one-of-a-kind property. We're absolutely blessed to be able to be working on it. And it's going to be a 5 to 7 year transformation. And it'll be super impactful to our team and our business as a whole.
Can you share, is it okay to share any details about where or what?
So I am happy to do that. It is called Habacoa. I'm sure habacoa.com is the email address, but I'll make sure we put that out there into the world. And it is in South Habacoa.
Oh.
In the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh, wow. And that's hard to get, like, just getting anything to there is really hard.
It's all going to come from, it's that logistics piece is ridiculously critical, because everything we do comes on a boat or has to go away on it, right? Yeah. Unless it stays in place. So,
wow, that's amazing. Okay, so then now looking at your entrepreneurial journey and all the benefits and eye-opening experiences and shared experiences that got you from 2001 to where we are today in 2023, and as you're like looking out into the future and visioning, what's exciting you most about what you see out there?
There's so many great things that are happening. I think what's really great about what's going on in our organization, I'll take them in no particular order. I think we've got a very strong leadership team in place that has are very accountable to the organization as a whole and to each other. And I believe that to be really important. We also understand completely, one day I may have a great day, and the next person may have that down day. So just like you talked about, the highs and the lows, right? But we realize as an organization, we're all together as one. And so the concept behind one K2M, so no matter what department, division, is happening, we're all there for the betterment of each other. And it's only one organization. It's not different pieces and parts. And I think that's an incredible thing. The project opportunities that we have, Dan, are extraordinary. And so, as I talked about that, moving from 10 to 50 to 100 to 500 to a million, we're now sitting here having the conversations of, let's do 5 of these million ones, but are we ready to take the swing at the $10 million one? Right. Mm-hmm. And being able to sit there and look out and go, okay, what does the $10 million competition look like? And I'll let you know, folks, if you're in that $10 million competition, we're coming for you. But it's
gauntlet
right?
thrown.
It's really about being able to, the exciting part is about elevating the game and learning about what it takes in order to go from that 1 to that 10 type of number. Mm. One of the great things that's happening right now in the hospitality work is, it was a little slow coming out of the gate in Q1, but in Q2 and what we see in Q3, it's really accelerating. And so we've had lots of opportunities with new clients, that are getting into these full service properties. But our boutique work has really come and is doing amazing stuff right now. And so our work down in the Florida Keys is taking those properties and elevating them to the next level and really making a game-changing difference. And we're blessed to be working on the absolute best of the best down there right now.
And you're spending more and more time down there too, which is exciting as well.
We'll be able to continue to do that, but we've got projects in Miami Beach now. We got projects up the coastline. I mean, it really is being able to work on this wide collection of work. That gives everybody, even from the intern to the executive, just a little bit of a lift and a joy of working on some really cool stuff, and that's exciting.
Yeah. And
whether that's in our aviation practice, our commercial practice, multifamily, hotel, government work, it's happening in every place, and we continue to refine what we do and what we do best. Like Jack Daly's 4 things. I mean, I get that perfectly fine. And we just continue to get better and better at what we do, that we are best at. And we seek that out.
As you were talking about going from 1 to 10, like a 1 million to 10 million, I think that being around all these entrepreneurs, it helps me think of that 10x idea. Whether how do you reduce expenses by 10x? How do you increase profitability? How do you increase market share? And that 10 number is really incredible, I think, because when we were talking about constraints earlier, and I love that exercise of, hey, we're doing this, we've been doing this way that got us to where we are here. But what if we want to do it 10 times faster? Oh, it's not possible. It's impossible. And you're like, okay, I hear you, but pretend you have unlimited budget, unlimited people. Like, what would you do? And then someone's like, oh, well, then I would steal a whole bunch of gold bars from Fort Knox and blah, 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 blah. But then they would figure out like what it is. And it might not be possible, but at least you're visioning and painting that picture to what the 10x improvement is. And I think I have a lot to thank to like, what was his name? Barrett Esarek with that X factor, like thinking about the 10x. And it kind of puts you in a box that you have to figure out a puzzle. And that entrepreneurship is really like just solving challenges and puzzles and all the time. And I love it. I just always want to find a better way to do something.
Without a doubt. That's the beauty. Like Kaizen principles, you get better and better at something as you continue to use it, experience it, figure out how to make it better, repeat.
Totally. All right. And now refresh me. Where did you go to college again?
Kent State University in Ohio.
Okay. That's what I thought. So you did go to Kent State. And now you're on an advisory board there. So what is your what's your interaction of like impacting students? Like how do you do that? Like what do you get from that? And would you have done that had you not joined EO?
Interesting. So from the perspective of the advisory board, really what it is a group of professionals saying, here's what we're experiencing. out in the world today, and here's how students could be more prepared to, come into that workplace. And that's one thing to be able to do. We also get to sit there and look in the exact reverse and go, what's happening in the university world? Then what things are they doing that we should be doing in our own businesses? Because they're typically 5 steps ahead of what a normal business would be doing, because they're very experimental in that period of time. So they're trying a lot of new technologies and things that are out there. And so it's giving us the ability to be able to look sort of inward and outward and work to see what's happening with the profession. And, I'm a extraordinarily firm believer in volunteerism. It's something that my mother instilled upon me since I was a little child. Always have done it, and will do it for the rest of my life. And it's about giving back. So this is the opportunity to be able to share my experience and be able to receive a little bit in return. But I feel it's my duty and any of ours in the profession to be able to give back. That's why we have interns. That's why we grow people. That's why we have amazing talent. It's because they're able to learn from our experiences. They learn from our mistakes. All the goods and the bads.
And we learn from theirs.
And it's an absolutely fantastic thing. So EO, I don't know if has done that for me, but what EO has done is given me an outlet to be that volunteer. And so I'm like you and I are both member leaders. We're both volunteers. I've been voluntold a lot of things to do. I've asked a lot of people to do things over the years, but it's a place where I really can be able to have a global reach, and with my time and my energy and intelligence, and I get 10x back from that almost every time.
Yeah, and then Kent State, I'm like, I want to go listen to Neil Young after this. What is that? Tin soldiers and Nixon's
right,
coming.
Little Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young at the time. Yep.
Yeah, totally. Actually, fun fact, Richard Nixon lived like within a mile of where I grew up, and I remember going trick-or-treating at his house. And he would answer the door, and he would give us like a little gold or like brass pen with his signature on it. I don't know where any of those are. But wow.
There's a memory.
Thank you for. I just went back to my 8-year-old self right there.
Yeah, you wonder where that 40-year-old pen has gone. I'm sure.
Yeah, I had a couple of them. I think I took them apart and I turned them into like weapons for my G.I. Joe figures.
Absolutely.
Like bazookas and things. Awesome. Well, Scott, this has just been totally fantastic, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for being a mentor. Thank you for what did you say? A member leader,
right? Absolutely.
Thank you for all that you're giving, because I know you'll get it back 10x, but that's not your intention.
Correct.
So if people wanted to learn more about you or K2M, what do they do? How do they find
Certainly.
you?
K2MDesign.com is a real simple way to be able to go. Our website's real basic. People and projects. It's how we run our business. We know we take the best possible care of our people. They'll take the best possible care of our projects. So click either one of those. You can learn about what we do and who we are.
And why you do it. Well, we learned about why you do what you do today. So just re-listen to this.
It's
again.
all right there.
Oh, wait. And then I had one other question for you before we wrap. The Scott I'm talking to now, hello, you magically appear in front of your Kent State version of yourself from 30 years ago. What advice do you have for yourself?
I'm going to tell myself 2 things. You know what you need to do. Follow your gut, because it's going to get you a long way. And equally so, when something appears to be too good to be true, it is. And it is okay to just say no. And walk away.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Wishful thinking can be a mind killer. Things are never too good to be true. Well, maybe every once in a while, but it's a real once in a while.
Only twice.
Yeah.
If it's too good to be true, just say no.
Yeah, got it. Unbelievable. Right? Yeah. Wow, that's a good smile to end on. Well, I want to say thank you. I know how busy you are and with all of your travel, and I'm just eternally grateful. Thank you so much for your time and caring and vulnerability. So thank you for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again somewhere in the world soon.
Yes. And again, I want to thank all of our listeners, because without you, I still wouldn't be sitting here talking to all these great people. And we keep growing week after week. So it's totally humbling. I think last time I checked, oh my God, this is crazy. We were like the number 500 design arts podcast in the world, and like number 300 in the US. And then I think we're bouncing around between 20 something and 80 something for design in the United States on Apple Podcasts too. Excellent. So that's like so people are listening, and the people who are listening want to listen. So if this has changed your idea of hospitality or entrepreneurism or people or culture or values, please pass it along, because that's how we grow, by word of mouth. So thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.